Hello, and welcome back to Baby Elias's stories. We now return to Feet of Clay by Terry Pratchett. Part 5. Rumor is information distilled so finely that it can filter through anything. It does not need doors and windows. Sometimes it doesn't even need people. It can exist free and wild, running from ear to ear without ever touching lips. It had escaped already. From the high window of the Patrician's bedroom, Sam Vimes could see people drifting towards the palace. There wasn't a mob. There wasn't even what you might call a crowd, but the Brownian motion of the streets was bouncing more and more people in his direction. He relaxed slightly when he saw one or two guards come through the gates. On the bed, Lord Vetinari opened his eyes. Commander Vimes, he murmured. What's been happening, sir? Said Vimes. I appear to be lying down, Vimes. You are in your office, sir, unconscious. Dear me, I must have been overdoing it. Well, thank you. If you would be kind enough to help me up. Lord Vetinari tried to pull himself upright, swayed, and fell back again. His face was pale. Sweat beaded his forehead. There was a knock at the door. Vimes opened it in a fraction. It's me, sir. Fred Colin. I got a message. What's up? Ah, Fred. Who've you got down there so far? There's me. And Constable Flint, and Constable Slapper, sir. Right. Someone's to go up to my place and get Willikins to bring me my straight uniform, and my sword and my crossbow, and an overnight bag, and some cigars, and tell Lady Sybil, well, they'll just have to tell Lady Sybil I've got to deal with things down here. That's all. What's happening, sir? Someone downstairs said Lord Vetinari's dead. Dead? Murmured the Patrician from his bed. Nonsense! He jerked himself upright, swung his legs over the bed and folded up. It was a slow, terrible collapse. Lord Vetinari was a tall man, so there was a long way to fall, and he did it by folding up a joint at a time. His ankles gave way, and he fell on his knees. His knees hit the ground with a bang, and he bent at the waist. Finally, his forehead bounced on the carpet. Oh, he said. His lordship's just a bit, Vimes began. Then he grabbed Colin and dragged him out of the room. I reckon he's been poisoned, Fred, and that's the truth of it. Colin looked horrified. Ye gods! Do you want me to get a doctor? Are you mad? We want him to live. Vimes bit his lip. He'd said the words that were on his mind, and now, without a doubt, the faint smoke of rumor would drift out across the city. But someone ought to look at him, he said aloud. Damn right, said Colin. You want I should get a wizard. How do we know it wasn't one of them? Ye gods! Vimes tried to think. All the doctors in the city were employed by the guilds, and all the guilds hated Vetinari. So, when you've got enough people to spare a runner, send him up to the stables on King's Down to fetch Donut Jimmy, he said. Colin looked even more stricken. Donut? He doesn't know anything about doctoring. He dopes racehorses. Just get him, Fred. What if he won't come? Then say that Commander Vimes knows why Laughing Boy didn't win the Quirm $100 last week, and say that I know Chris O'Praise, the troll, lost 10,000 on that race. Colin was impressed. You've got a nasty twist of mind there, sir. There's going to be a lot of people turning up pretty soon. I want a couple of watchmen outside this room, trolls or dwarves for preference, and no one is to come in without my permission, right? Colin's face contorted as various emotions fought for space. Finally, he managed to say, "But poisoned? He's got food tasters and everything." Then maybe it was one of them, Fred. My God, sir. You don't trust anyone, do you? No, Fred. Incidentally. Was it you? Just kidding. Vimes added quickly as Colin's face threatened to burst into tears. Off you go. We don't have much time. Vimes shut the door, brunk, and leaned on it. Then he turned the key in the lock, click, and moved a chair under the handle. Finally, he hauled the Patrician off the floor and rolled him on the bed. Flump. There was a grunt from the man, and his eyelids flickered. Poison, thought Vimes. That's the worst of it all. It doesn't make a noise. The poisoner can be miles away. You can't see it. Often you can't really smell it or taste it. It could be anywhere, and there it is, doing its work. The Patrician opened his eyes. I would like a glass of water, he said. There was a jug and a glass by the bed. Vimes picked up the jug and hesitated. I'll send someone to get some, he said. Lord Vetinari blinked very slowly. Sir Samuel, he said. But whom can you trust? There was a crowd in the big audience chamber when Vimes finally went downstairs. They were milling about, worried and unsure, and, like important men everywhere, when they were worried and unsure, they got angry. The first to bustle up to Vimes was Mr. Boggis of the Guild of Thieves. What's going on, Vimes? He demanded. He met Vimes' stare. Sir Samuel, I mean, he said, losing a certain amount of bustle. I believe Lord Vetinari has been poisoned, said Vimes. The background muttering stopped. Boggis realized that, since he had been the one to ask the question, he was now the man on the spot. Fatally? He said. In the silence, a pin would have clanged. Not yet, said Vimes. Around the hall there was a turning of heads. The focus of the universal attention was Dr. Downey, the head of the Guild of Assassins. Downey nodded. I am not aware of any arrangement with regard to Lord Vetinari, he said. Besides, as I am sure is common knowledge, we have set the price for the Patrician at $1 million. And who has that sort of money indeed? Said Vimes. Well, you for one, Sir Samuel, said Downey. There was some nervous laughter. We wish to see Lord Vetinari in any case, said Boggis. No. No? And why not, pray? Doctor's orders. Really? Which doctor? Behind Vimes, Sergeant Colin shut his eyes. Dr. James Folsom, said Vimes. It took a few seconds before someone worked this out. What? You can't mean Donut Jimmy? He's a horse doctor. So I understand. said Vimes. But why? Because many of his patients survive, said Vimes. He raised his hands as the protests grew. And now, gentlemen, I must leave you. Somewhere there's a poisoner. I'd like to find him before he becomes a murderer. He went back up the stairs, trying to ignore the shouts behind him. You sure about old Donut, sir? Said Cullen, catching him up. Well, do you trust him? Said Vimes. Donut? Of course not. Right, he's untrustworthy, and so we don't trust him. So that's all right. But I've seen him revive a horse when everyone else said it was fit only for the knackers. Horse doctors have to get results, Fred. And that was true enough. When a human doctor, after much bleeding and cupping, finds that a patient has died out of sheer desperation, he can always say, Dear me, will of the gods, that will be $30, please, and walk away a free man. This is because human beings are not technically worth anything. A good racehorse, on the other hand, may be worth $20,000. A doctor who lets one hurry off too soon to that great big paddock in the sky may well expect to hear out of some dark alley a voice saying something on the lines of Mr. Chrysoprase is very upset, and find the brief remainder of his life full of incident. No one seems to know where Captain Carrot and Angua are, said Cullen. It's their day off, and Nobby's nowhere to be found. Well, that's something to be thankful for. Biggly, biggly bong beep, said a voice from Vimes's pocket. He lifted out the organizer and raised the flap. Yes. 12 noon, said the imp. Lunch with Lady Sybil? It stared at their faces. That's all right, isn't it? It said. Cheery Littlebottom wiped his brow. Commander Vimes is right. It could be arsenic, he said. It looks like arsenic poisoning to me. Look at his colour. Nasty stuff, said Donut Jimmy. Has he been eating his bedding? All the sheets seem to be here, so I suppose the answer is no. How's he pissing? The usual way, I assume. Donut sucked at his teeth. He had amazing teeth. It was the second thing everyone noticed about him. They were the colour of the inside of an unwashed teapot. Walk him around a bit on the loose, Rain, he said. The patrician opened his eyes. You are a doctor, aren't you? He said. Donut Jimmy gave him an uncertain look. He was not used to patients who could talk. Well, yeah, I have a lot of patience, he said. Indeed, I have very little, said the patrician. He tried to lift himself off the bed and slumped back. I'll mix up a draught, said Donut Jimmy, backing away. You're to hold his nose and pour it down his throat twice a day, right? And no oats. He hurried out, leaving Cheery alone with the patrician. Corporal Littlebottom looked around the room. Vimes hadn't given him much instruction. He'd said, I'm sure it won't be the food tasters. For all they know, they might be asked to eat the whole plateful. Still, we'll get detritus to talk to them. You find out the how, right? And then leave the who to me. If you didn't eat or drink a poison, what else was left? Probably you could put it on a pad and make someone breathe it, or dribble some in their ear while they slept. Or they could touch it, maybe a small dart, or an insect bite. The patrician stirred and looked at Cheery through watery red eyes. Tell me, young man, Are you a policeman?
Just started, sir.
You appear to be of the dwarf persuasion.
Sherry didn't bother to answer. There was no use denying it. Somehow people could tell if you were a dwarf just by looking at you.
Arsenic is a very popular poison, said the Patrician. Hundreds of uses around the home. Crushed diamonds used to be in vogue for hundreds of years, despite the fact they never worked. Giant spiders, too, for some reason. Mercury is for those with patience. Aqua fortis for those without. Canthadrides has its followers. Much can be done with the secretion of various animals. The bodily fluids of the caterpillar of the quantum weather butterfly will render a man quite helpless. But we return to arsenic like an old friend. There was a drowsiness in the Patrician's voice. Is that not so, young Vetinari?
Yes, indeed, sir. Correct.
But where then shall we put it, seeing that all will look for it? In the last place they will look, sir. Wrong. Foolish. We put it where no one will look.
The voice faded to a murmur. The bed linen, Cherry thought. Even clothes. Into the skin, slowly. Sherry hammered on the door. A guard opened. Get another bed. What? Another bed from anywhere and fresh bed linen. He looked down. There wasn't much of a carpet on the floor. Even so, in a bedroom where people might walk with bare feet. And take this rug and bring another one.
What else?
Detritus came in, nodded at Sherry, and looked carefully around the room. Finally, he picked up a battered chair.
This'll have to do, he said. If he want, I can break their back off fit.
What? Said Cherry.
Old Donut said, for to get a stool sample, said Detritus, going out again.
Sherry opened his mouth to stop the troll, and then shrugged. Anyway, the less furniture in here, the better. And that seemed about it, short of stripping the wallpaper off the wall. Sam Vimes stared out of the window. Vetinari hadn't bothered much in the way of bodyguards. He had used, that is, he still did use, food tasters, but that was common enough. Mind you, Vetinari had added his own special twist. The tasters were well paid and treated, and they were all sons of the chief cook. But his main protection was that he was just that bit more useful alive than dead, from everyone's point of view. The big, powerful guilds didn't like him, but they liked him in power a lot more than they liked the idea of someone from a rival guild in the oblong office. Besides, Lord Vetinari represented stability. It was a cold and clinical kind of stability, but part of his genius was the discovery that stability was what people wanted more than anything else. He'd said to Vimes once, in this very room, standing at this very window, "They think they want good government and justice for all Vimes, yet what is it they really crave deep in their hearts? Only that things go on as normal, and tomorrow is pretty much like today." Now Vimes turned around. "What's my next move, Fred?"
"Dunno, sir."
Vimes sat down in the Patrician's chair. "Can you remember the last Patrician?"
"Old Lord Snapcase? And the one before him, Lord Winder?" "Oh, yeah. Nasty pieces of work they were. At least this one didn't giggle or wear a dress.
The past tense, thought Vimes. It creeps in already. Not long past, but already very tense. It's gone very quiet downstairs, Fred, he said.
Plotting? Plotting don't make a lot of noise, sir, generally.
Vetinari's not dead, Fred.
Yes, sir, but he's not exactly in charge, is he?
Vimes shrugged. No one's in charge, I suppose.
Could be, sir. There again, you never know your luck.
Colin was standing stiffly to attention, with his eyes firmly fixed on the middle distance and his voice pitched carefully to avoid any hint of emotion in the words. Vimes recognized the stance. He used it himself when he had to.
What do you mean, Fred? He said. Not a thing, sir. Figure of speech, sir.
Vimes sat back. This morning, he thought, I knew what the day held. I was going to see about that damn coat of arms. Then there was my usual meeting with Vetinari. I was going to read some reports after lunch. Maybe go and see how they're getting on with the new watch house in Chitling Street. And have an early night. Now Fred's suggesting.
What?
Listen, Fred. If there is to be a new ruler, it won't be me.
Who'll it be, sir?
Colin's voice still held that slow, deliberate tone.
How should I know? It could be.
The gap opened ahead of him, and he could feel his thoughts being sucked into it.
You're talking about Captain Carrot, aren't you, Fred? Could be, sir. I mean, none of the guilds had let some other guild bloke be ruler now, and everyone likes Captain Carrot. And, well, rumours got about that he's the heir to the throne, sir.
There's no proof of that, Sergeant.
Not for me to say, sir. Don't know about that. Don't know what is proof,
said Colin with just a hint of defiance.
But he's got that sword of his, and the birthmark shaped like a crown, and, well, everyone knows he's king. It's his charisma.
Charisma, thought Vimes. Oh yes, Carrot has charisma. He makes something happen in people's heads. He can talk a charging leopard into giving up and handing over its teeth and doing good work in the community, and that would really upset the old ladies. Vimes distrusted charisma.
No more kings, Fred. Right you are, sir. By the way, Nobby's turned up.
The day gets worse and worse, Fred.
You said you talked to him about all these funerals, sir.
The job goes on, I suppose. All right, go and tell him to come up here. Vimes was left to himself. No more kings. Vimes had difficulty in articulating why this should be so, why the concept revolted in his very bones. After all, a good many of the patricians had been as bad as any king, but they were sort of bad on equal terms. What set Vimes's teeth on edge was the idea that kings were a different kind of human being. A higher life form, somehow magical, but there was some magic at that. Ankh-Morpork still seemed to be littered with royal this and royal that. Little old men who got paid a few pence a week to do a few meaningless chores, like the master of the king's keys or the keeper of the crown jewels, even though there were no keys and certainly no jewels. Royalty was like dandelions. No matter how many heads you chopped off, the roots were still there, underground, waiting to spring up again.
It seemed to be a chronic disease. It was as if even the most intelligent person had this little blank spot in their heads where someone had written, "Kings, what a good idea." Whoever had created humanity had left in a major design flaw. Whoever had created humanity had left in a major design flaw. It was its tendency to bend at the knees. There was a knock at the door. It should not be possible for a knock to sound surreptitious.
Surreptitious.
Surreptitious. Kept secret, especially because it would not be approved of. Surreptitious. Secret. There was a knock at the door. It should not be possible for a knock to sound surreptitious, yet this knock achieved it. It had harmonics. They told the hindbrain, "The person knocking will, if no one eventually answers, open the door anyway and sidle in, whereupon he will certainly nick any smokes that are lying around, read any correspondence that catches his eye, open a few drawers, take a nip out of such bottles of alcohol as are discovered, but stop short of major crime, because he is not criminal in the sense of making a moral decision, but in the sense that a weasel is evil. It is built into his every shape." It was a knock with a lot to say for itself. "Come in, Nobby," said Vimes wearily. Corporal Nobbs sidled in. It was another special trait of his that he could sidle forwards as well as sideways. He saluted awkwardly. There was something absolutely changeless about Corporal Nobbs, Vimes told himself. Even Fred Cullen had adapted to the changing nature of the City Watch. But nothing alerted Corporal Nobbs in any way. It wouldn't matter what you did to him. There was always something fundamentally nobby about Corporal Nobbs. "Nobby?"
"Yes, sir."
Take a seat, Nobby." Corporal Nobbs looked suspicious. This was not how a dressing down was supposed to begin.
Fred said you wanted to see me, Mr. Vimes, on account of timekeeping."
Did I? Oh, yes, Nobby. How many grandmothers' funerals have you really been to?
3,
said Nobby uncomfortably. 3?
It turned out Nanny Nobbs weren't quite dead the first time.
So why have you taken all this time off?
Don't like to say, sir.
Why not?
You're gonna go spare, sir.
Spare?
You know, sir, throw a wobbler.
I might, Nobby. Vimes sighed. But it'll be nothing to what I get heaved if you don't tell me.
Thing is, it's the tricentenary. This 300-year celebration thing next year, Mr. Vimes.
Yes? Nobby licked his lips.
I didn't like to ask for time off special. Fred said you were a bit sensitive about it all. But you know I'm in the peeled nuts, sir.
Vimes nodded. Those clowns who dress up and pretend to fight old battles with blunt swords, he said.
The Ankh-Morpork Historical Recreation Society, sir,
said Nobby, a shade reproachfully. That's what I said.
Well, we're going to recreate the Battle of Ankh-Morpork for the celebration, see? That means extra practice.
It all begins to make sense, said Vimes, nodding warily. You've been marching up and down with your tin pike, eh? In my time.
Not exactly, Mr. Vimes. I've been riding up and down on my white horse, to tell the truth.
Oh, playing at being a general, eh?
A bit more in a general, sir.
Goon? Nobby's Adam's apple bobbed nervously.
I'm going to be King Lorenzo, sir. You know, the last king. The one you're,
The air froze. You are going to be? Vimes began, unpeeling each word like a sullen grape of wrath.
I said you'd go spare, said Nobby. Fred Collins said you'd go spare too.
Why are you?
We drew lots, sir.
And you lost?
Nobby squirmed. Not exactly lost, sir. Not precisely lost. More sort of won, sir. Everyone wanted to play him. I mean, you get a horse in a good costume and everything, sir. And he was a king when all's said and done, sir.
The man was a vicious monster.
Well, it was a long time ago, sir, said Nobby anxiously.
Vimes calmed down a little. And who drew the straw to play Stoneface Vimes? Nobby!
Nobby hung his head. No one, sir. No one wanted to play him, sir.
The little corporal swallowed, and then plunged onwards with the air of a man determined to get it all over with.
So, we're making a man out of straw, sir, so he'll burn nicely when we throw him on the bonfire in the evening. There's going to be fireworks, sir, he added with a dreadful certainty.
Vimes's face shut down. Nobby preferred it when people shouted. He had been shouted at for most of his life. He could handle shouting. No one wanted to be Stoneface Vimes, Vimes said coldly.
On account of him being on the losing side, sir.
Losing? Vimes's Ironheads won. He ruled the city for 6 months.
Nobby squirmed again. Yeah, but everyone in the society says he didn't ought to off, sir. They said it was just a fluke, sir. After all, he was outnumbered 10-1 and he had warts, sir. And he was a bit of a bastard, sir, when all's said and done. He did chop off a king's head, sir. You got to be a bit of a nasty type to do that, sir. Saving your presence, Mr. Vimes.
Vimes shook his head. What did it matter, anyway? But it did matter. Somewhere. It had all been a long time ago. It didn't matter what a bunch of deranged romantics thought. Facts were facts. All right. I understand, he said. It's almost funny, really, because there's something else I've got to tell you, Nobby.
Yes, sir,
said Nobby, looking relieved. Do you remember your father? Nobby looked about to panic again.
What kind of question is that to suddenly ask anybody, sir?
Purely a social inquiry.
Old Sconner, sir? Not much, sir. Never used to see him much except when the military police used to come to drag him out of the attic.
Do you know much about your, antecedents?
That's a lie, sir. I haven't got no antecedents, sir. No matter what you might have been told.
Oh, good. You don't actually know what antecedents means, do you, Nobby? Nobby shifted uneasily. He didn't like being questioned by policemen, especially since he was one.
Not in so many words, sir.
You never got told anything about your forebears. Another word expression crossed Nobby's face. So Vimes quickly added, your ancestors.
Only old Sconner, sir. Sir, if all this is working up to asking about them sacks of vegetables which went missing from the shop in Treacle Mine Road, I was not anywhere near the...
Vimes waved a hand vaguely. He didn't leave you anything, or anything?
Couple of scars, sir, and this trick elbow of mine. It aches sometimes when the weather changes. I always remembers old Sconer when the wind blows from the hub.
Ah, right.
And this, of course,
Nobby fished around behind his rusting breastplate. And that was a marvel too. Even Sergeant Cullen's armor could shine, if not actually gleam, but any metal anywhere near Nobby's skin corroded very quickly. The corporal pulled out a leather thong that hung around his neck. There was a gold ring on it. Despite the fact that gold cannot corrode, it had nevertheless developed a patina. Patina, a green or brown film on the surface of bronze or similar metals produced by oxidation over a long period. Despite the fact that gold cannot corrode, it had nevertheless developed a patina.
he left it to me when he was on his deathbed,
said Nobby.
Well, when I say left it...
Did he say anything?
Well, yeah, he did say, "Give it back, you little bugger, sir. See, had it on a string round this neck, sir, just like me. But it's not like a proper ring, sir. I'd have flogged it, but it's all I got to remember him by, except when the wind blows from the hub."
Vimes took the ring and rubbed it with a finger. It was a seal ring with a coat of arms on it. Age and wear and the immediate presence of the body of Corporal Nobbs had made it quite unreadable. "You are armigerous, Nobby."
Armigerous.
Armiger, a person entitled to heraldic arms. "You are armigerous, Nobby." Nobby nodded.
"But I got a special shampoo for it, sir."
Vimes sighed. He was an honest man. He'd always felt that was one of the bigger defects in his personality. "When you've got a moment, nip along to the College of Heralds in Mollymog Street, will you? Take this ring with you and say I sent you." "It's all right, Nobby," said Vimes. "You won't get into trouble, not as such."
"If you say so, sir."
"And you don't have to bother with the sir, Nobby."
"Yes, sir."
When Nobby had gone, Vimes reached behind the desk and picked up a faded copy of Twerp's Peerage, or, as he personally thought of it, the Guide to the Criminal Classes. You wouldn't find slum dwellers in these pages, but you would find their landlords. And while it was regarded as pretty good evidence of criminality to be living in a slum, for some reason owning a whole street of them merely got you invited to the very best social occasions. These days they seem to be bringing out a new edition every week. Dragon had been right about one thing at least. Everyone in Ankh-Morpork seemed to be hankering after more arms than they were born with. He looked up Denobis. There even was a damn coat of arms. One supporter of the shield was a hippo, presumably one of the royal hippos of Ankh-Morpork, and therefore the ancestor of Roderick and Keith. The other was a bull of some sort, with a very Nobby-like expression. It was holding a golden ankh, which, this being the Denob's coat of arms, it had probably stolen from somewhere. The shield was red and green. There was a white chevron with 5 apples on it. Quite what they had to do with warfare was unclear. Perhaps they were some kind of jolly visual pun or play on words that had had them slapping their thighs down at the Royal College of Arms. Although probably, if Dragon slapped his thigh too hard, his leg would fall off. It was easy enough to imagine unennobled knobs, because where Nobby went wrong was in thinking small.
Ennobled.
It was easy enough to imagine unennobled knobs, because where Nobby went wrong was in thinking small. He sidled into places and pinched things that weren't worth much. If only he'd sidled into continents and stolen entire cities, slaughtering many of the inhabitants in the process, he'd have been a pillar of the community. There was nothing in the book under Vimes. Suffer not injustice. Vimes wasn't a pillar of the community. He killed a king with his own hands. It needed doing. But the community, whatever that was, didn't always like the people who did what needed to be done or said what had to be said. He put some other people to death as well. That was true. But the city had been lousy. There had been a lot of stupid wars. We were practically part of the Clatchian Empire. Sometimes you needed a bastard. History had wanted surgery. Sometimes Dr. Chopper is the only surgeon to hand. There's something final about an axe. But kill one wretched king and everyone calls you a regicide. It wasn't as if it was a habit or anything. Vimes had found old Stoneface's journal in the unseen university library. The man had been hard, no doubt about that. But they were hard times. He'd written, "In the friars of struggle, let us bake new men, who will not heed the old lies." But the old lies had won in the end. He said to people, "You're free," and they said, "Hooray." And then he showed them what freedom costs, and they called him a tyrant, and as soon as he'd been betrayed, they milled around a bit like barn-bred chickens who's seen the big world outside for the first time. And then they went back into the warm and shut the door. Bing bong, bingily beep, Vimes sighed, and pulled out his organizer. "Yes." "Memo, appointment with bootmaker, 2 p.m, said the imp. "It's not 2 o'clock yet, and that was Tuesday in any case," said Vimes. "So I'll cross it off the list of things to do then." Vimes put the disorganized organizer back in his pocket and went and looked out of the window again. Who had a motive for poisoning Lord Vetinari? No, that wasn't the way to crack it. Probably if you went to some outlying area of the city and confined your investigations to little old ladies who didn't get out much, what with all the wallpaper over the door and everything, you might be able to find someone without a motive. But the man stayed alive by always arranging matters so that a future without him represented a riskier business than a future with him still upright. The only people, therefore, who'd risk killing him were madmen, and the gods knew Ankh-Morpork had enough of them, or someone who was absolutely confident that if the city collapsed, he'd be standing on top of a pile. If Fred were right, and the sergeant was generally a good indicator of how the man in the street thought, because he was the man in the street, then that person was Captain Carrot. But Carrot was one of the few people in the city who seemed to like Vetinari. Of course, There was one other person who stood to gain. Damn, thought Vimes. It's me, isn't it? There was another knock at the door. He didn't recognize this one. He opened the door cautiously. It's me, sir, Littlebottom. Come in then. It was nice to know there was at least one person in the world with more problems than him. How was his lordship? Stable, said Littlebottom. Dead is stable, said Vimes. I mean, he's alive, sir, and sitting up reading. Mr. Donut made up some sticky stuff that tasted of seaweed, sir, and I mixed up some glue bool's salts. Sir, you know the old man in the house on the bridge? Sir, you know the old man in the house on the bridge? What old? Oh, yes. It seemed a long time ago. What about him? Well, you asked me to look around and I took some pictures. This one, sir. He handed Vimes a rectangle that was nearly all black. Odd. Where'd you get it? Have you ever heard the story about dead men's eyes, sir? Assume I haven't had a literary education, Littlebottom. Well, they say... Who say? They, sir. You know, they. The same people who are the everyone in Everyone Knows? The people who live in the community? Yes, sir. I suppose so, sir. Vimes waved a hand. Oh, them. Well, go on. They say that the last thing a dying man sees stays imprinted in his eyes, sir. Oh, that's just an old story. Yes, amazing, really. I mean, if it weren't true, you'd have thought it wouldn't have survived, wouldn't you? I thought I saw this little red spark, so I got the imp to paint a really big picture before it faded completely, and right in the center. Couldn't the imp have made it up? Said Vimes, staring at the picture again. They haven't got the imagination to lie, sir. What they see is what you get. Glowing eyes. 2 red dots, said Littlebottom, conscientiously. Which might indeed be a pair of glowing eyes, sir. Good point, Littlebottom. Vimes rubbed his chin. Blast, I just hope it's not a god of some sort. That's all I need at a time like this. Can you make copies so I can send them to all the watch houses? Yes, sir. The imp's got a good memory. Hop to it then. But before Littlebottom could go, the door opened again. Vimes looked up. Carrot and Angua were there. Carrot, I thought you were on your day off. We found a murder, sir, at the Dwarf Bread Museum, but when we got back to the watch house, they told us Lord Vetinari's dead. Did they? Thought Vimes. That's rumour for you. And we could modulate it with the truth. How useful could it be? He's breathing well for a corpse, he said. I think he'll be okay. Someone got past his guard, that's all. I've got a doctor to see him. Don't worry. Someone got past his guard, he thought. Yes, and I'm his guard. I hope the man's a leader in the field. That's all I can say, said Carrot severely. He's even better than that. He's the doctor to the leaders of the field, said Vimes. I'm his guard, and I didn't see it coming. It'd be terrible for the city if anything happened to him, said Carrot. Vimes saw nothing but innocent concern behind Carrot's forthright stare. It would, wouldn't it? He said. Anyway, it's under control. You said there's been another murder? At the Dwarf Bread Museum, someone killed Mr. Hopkinson with his own bread. Made him eat it. Hit him with it, sir, said Carrot reproachfully. Battle bread, sir. Is he the old man with the white beard? Yes, sir. You remember, I introduced you to him when I took you to see the Boomerang Biscuit exhibition. Angua thought she saw a faint wince of recollection speed guiltily across Vimes's face.
Who's going round killing old men? He said to the world at large.
Don't know, sir. Constable Angua went plain clothes. Carrot waggled his eyebrows conspiratorially. And I couldn't find a sniff of anyone, and nothing was taken. This is what it was done with. The battle bread was much larger than an ordinary loaf. Vimes turned it over gingerly.
Dwarves throw it like discus, right?
Yes, sir. At the Seven Mountains Games last year, Snorri Shieldbiter took the tops off a line of 6 hard-boiled eggs at 50 yards, sir. And that was with just a standard hunting loaf. But this is, well, it's a cultural artifact. We haven't got the baking technology for bread like this anymore. It's unique.
Valuable?
Very, sir.
Worth stealing?
You'd never be able to get rid of it. Every honest dwarf would recognize it.
Did you hear about that priest being murdered on Misbegot Bridge?
Carrot looked shocked. Not old Father Tubalcheck? Really? Vimes stopped himself from asking.
You know him then?
Because Carrot knew everyone. If Carrot were to be dropped into some dense tropical jungle, it'd be, "Hello, Mr. Runs swiftly through the trees. Good morning, Mr. Talks to the forest. What a splendid blowpipe, and what a novel place for a feather."
Did he have more than one enemy? Said Vimes.
Sorry, sir? Why more than one?
I should say the fact that he had one is obvious, wouldn't you?
He was a nice old chap, said Carrot. Hardly stirred out. Spent all his time with his books. Very religious. I mean all kinds of religion. Studied them. Bit odd, but no harm in him. Why should anyone want to kill him? Or Mr. Hopkinson, a pair of harmless old men? Vimes handed him the battle bread.
We shall find out. Constable Angua, I want you to have a look at this one. Take Corporal Littlebottom, he said. He's been doing some work on it. Angua's from Uberwald too, Littlebottom. Maybe you've got friends in common, that sort of thing.
Carrot nodded cheerfully. Angua's expression went wooden.
Hudruk gar dwatch, shirtaz, said Carrot. Angua constable, Angua gar buk, bargra, shirtaz kazak.
Angua appeared to concentrate.
Grduk di baz hidrak, she managed.
Carrot laughed. You just said small delightful mining tool of a feminine nature. Sherry stared at Angua, who returned the stare blankly while mumbling. Well, dwarfish is difficult if you haven't eaten gravel all your life. Sherry was still staring. Thank you, he managed. I'd better go and tidy up. What about Lord Vetinari? Said Carrot.
I'm putting my best man on that, said Vimes. Trustworthy, reliable, knows the in and outs of this place like the back of his hand. I'm handling it, in other words.
Carrot's hopeful expression faded to hurt puzzlement. Don't you want me to? He said. I could.
No, indulge an old man. I want you to go back to the watch house and take care of things.
What things?
Everything. Rise to the occasion. Move paper around. That's the new shift rota to draw up. There's that new shift rota to draw up. Shout at people. Read reports.
Carrot saluted.
Yes, Commander Vimes. Good. Off you go then. And if anything happens to Vetinari,
Vimes added to himself as the dejected Carrot went out,
no one will be able to say you were anywhere near him.